Hi, I'm Victoria. My mom said I was bad luck. Then she sold my grandfather's house for $33 million and handed me a motel voucher like I was a stranger. She erased me from the family photos, stood on a stage and claimed I never belonged, while smiling for cameras that didn't know the truth. But what hurts more than being betrayed is knowing they planned it long before they told you. So when she called me too emotional to lead, I didn't cry. I found the will. I found his words. And I pressed play. What happened after? She never saw coming. Would you? They used to say I was sensitive. Then it became unstable. Eventually, they just settled on bad luck. That one stuck. You don't realize you've been cast in a role until someone else starts writing the script. In my family, I wasn't the hero, the helper, or even the quiet one. I was the storm cloud they blamed for every thunderclap. Not because I caused the chaos, but because I never looked surprised when it came. They say blood is thicker than water, but sometimes water is the only thing that doesn't drown you. It was supposed to be a simple weekend, nothing fancy, just a small gathering to honor Grandpa, or so the message had said, something about preserving the Costello legacy. I didn't ask questions. I'd been living in his house since the funeral, keeping it clean, paying the water bill, trimming the bushes. My mother never said thank you, neither did Lincoln. But they didn't kick me out either. Until that day. The morning started normal enough. Toast. Coffee. Silence. I was folding laundry in the back room when I heard voices out front. Laughter. High heels on hardwood. I stepped out and saw them. Florence, in one of her signature beige suits. Lincoln, already at the bar cart, pouring a whiskey like it was 5 o'clock. A woman I didn't know, holding a clipboard. Behind her, a couple more. Strangers. One of them was taking photos. My mother looked up at me like I was the help. Victoria, she said, flat. We thought it'd be easier if the house showed like a real listing. I blinked. What's going on? We're staging the house, she said. Please don't start. I didn't. I walked back into the hallway. That same hallway where Grandpa used to hang our coats and whistle Sinatra off-key. They were laughing in there now. Strangers, holding glasses of wine in the kitchen I'd mopped 2 days ago. I told myself not to overreact. Don't make waves. Don't be dramatic. I'd been conditioned not to expect clarity, just consequences. Then came the toast. Florence was standing in front of the fireplace, holding a glass of sparkling something. Her tone was polished, rehearsed. Today's not just about saying goodbye to a house, she said. It's about rebuilding a legacy. The Costello legacy, without the curse this time. A few people chuckled. Someone near the hors d'oeuvres table asked, Curse? She laughed. My daughter, Victoria, she's always been bad luck. There it was, like a punch in the chest. Not the words, but the way she smiled as she said them. The air didn't leave the room. It left my lungs. People looked at me. Some laughed politely. Most just looked away. One man raised his eyebrows and sipped his drink like this was juicy. I tried to smile. My lips didn't cooperate. My arms felt wrong. I wanted to vanish, not out of shame, but because I suddenly knew I wasn't part of the picture they were painting. I was the smear they wanted wiped off the canvas. The floor didn't fall out from under me. I just disappeared, while still standing there. Later, she pulled me aside, not in secret, not in private, just far enough from the party for appearances. We need the house cleared by tomorrow, she said, calm, efficient. Tomorrow? I repeated. She nodded. The staging starts Monday. It's better this way. Better for who? Don't do this, she said. You were here because you had nowhere else to be. Don't act like this was your contribution. I didn't respond right away. I just stared. I'd stayed behind when everyone else left. I sat with Grandpa when he forgot my name. I cleaned up after hospice care. I signed the cremation form. Now she was telling me none of that counted. She handed me a prepaid motel voucher. Folded. Neat. Tucked between her fingers like a party favor. I found a place nearby, she added. It'll give you time to figure things out. One of the guests passed by, nodding at me like I was a cashier. Best of luck getting back on your feet, he said. I didn't answer. I turned, walked back to the guest room, and packed. 2 bags, 43 years of life, narrowed down to a duffel and a rolling suitcase with a broken wheel. I didn't cry. I folded, t-shirt, socks, Grandpa's flannel. On the nightstand was a photo, me and Grandpa sitting on the porch. It wasn't in a fancy frame, just a chipped wooden one with peeling paint. Nobody else had looked at it in years. They probably forgot it was there. I slipped it into my bag. When I left, I didn't slam the door, didn't say goodbye, just walked out the side gate. The sun was setting. I didn't turn back. I thought walking out was the hardest part, but it turns out it was just the beginning. The motel room smelled like bleach and resignation, the kind of sterile you don't trust. The walls were thin. I could hear a man coughing 3 rooms down and someone else watching a game show too loud. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding one of the 2 bags I managed to pack. I didn't unpack. Not yet. There was a vending machine outside, humming with fluorescent light. Inside it, a row of cheap candy bars, including the one Grandpa used to bring me after school. I stared at it through the glass for a long while, and walked away. I didn't want sweet, I wanted familiar, and this place had none of it. I checked my phone. No messages, no missed calls, not even a scam text. I told myself I left gracefully, that walking out with dignity was better than fighting. But my hands shook. My knuckles ached from gripping the suitcase handle too tightly. And the silence in that room, it wasn't peace. It was proof. I hadn't just been evicted from the house. I'd been evicted from belonging. The next morning, I drove back to the house. I'd left a small envelope tucked inside Grandpa's bedroom dresser. Property records, mostly. Stuff I didn't want falling into Florence's hands. It was early enough I figured she wouldn't be home yet. I parked across the street and crossed quietly. The front door was wide open. I stepped in cautiously and froze. A woman in a pantsuit stood in the foyer, clipboard in hand. 2 couples trailed behind her, dressed in boutique labels and money. She spotted me immediately. "Excuse me, are you the assistant?" I blinked. "I used to live here." "Oh," she said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We've had a few stagers in and out this week. Hard to keep track." Behind her, one of the women whispered, "It's so tasteful, very designer." I walked past them into the living room. It looked sterile, generic, not like the place Grandpa and I used to sit and watch baseball reruns in. No quilt over the armrest, no bowl of Werther's Originals by the lamp. They'd stripped it, sanitized it, not just of furniture, of memory. It's hard to miss someone who was never allowed to leave fingerprints. Down the hall, I stopped at what they now called the legacy wall. Florence's photos dominated the display. Her ribbon cuttings, charity events, networking galas, Lincoln's graduation photo, blown up like a magazine cover, and a polished plaque, preserving the Costello vision. No photo of Grandpa, no photo of me. One gold-framed quote stared back at me. "Sometimes you must prune a tree to let it truly bloom." Underneath it, engraved in delicate script, was her name. I stood there, staring, not angry, just hollow. "I was never the tree," I whispered. "I was the root you didn't want people to see." I closed my eyes, and for a moment I was back on the porch with Grandpa. He'd just finished his 2nd glass of iced tea and was watching the clouds roll in. "You don't have to be visible to be essential, Vicky," he'd said. "Roots don't brag, they just hold everything up." I didn't cry then either. I grabbed the envelope from the drawer in Grandpa's room. It was right where I left it, taped to the bottom of the top drawer, still sealed. I tucked it into my bag, turned around, and left without a word. As I walked down the driveway, I caught sight of the lawn. I used to mow it every Saturday morning like clockwork. There was a rhythm to it, the hum of the old push mower, the smell of grass, the way Grandpa would wave from the porch with a beer in hand. Now the lawn was professionally edged, perfect, impersonal. The tree swing I helped hang for Lincoln's daughter was gone. In its place, a modern sculpture shaped like a twisted spiral, cold and shiny, expensive, meaningless. As I reached the end of the driveway, I looked back one last time. A curtain shifted in the upstairs window. Someone was watching. No one wanted me to return, and now I never would. I climbed into the car and sat there. No music, no AC. Just the sound of my own breath and the ticking of the dashboard clock. I didn't cry, but my hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my fingers cramped. I didn't let go until the pain forced me to. I wasn't mourning the house. I was mourning the story they were rewriting and cutting me out of. Back at the motel, I sat on the edge of the bed and opened the envelope. Nothing dramatic. Just a folded piece of paper, aged but clean. Grandpa's handwriting. Unmistakable. "Keep this with you," it read. "One day, you'll need to prove what's real." I unfolded the slip tucked behind it. A receipt from the county clerk's office. 3 months before his death. Title transfer request. The county clerk's office didn't look like a place where truths went to die, but it smelled like it. Old carpet, plastic chairs, cheap pens chained to counters, the kind of place where things get filed and forgotten. I stood in line behind a man arguing about his truck registration and a woman holding a folder labeled eviction. I didn't fit in, and yet, maybe I did. When it was my turn, I handed over the slip of paper Grandpa had kept. The receipt dated 3 months before he died. The woman at the counter didn't flinch. "If the request wasn't completed, it's probably archived," she said flatly. "You'll need to submit a retrieval form." I nodded. My voice didn't work yet. I reached for the pen on the counter, already knowing how this would go. Another dead end, another piece of myself denied. But then the woman looked up again. "What's the name on the request?" I told her. She typed. Paused. "We do have something. It's restricted access. Hang tight." That pause, just those few words, made the hair on the back of my neck rise. Something was off. Not wrong, just deeper than I'd expected. 15 minutes later, an older man in a wrinkled button-down shirt stepped out from a side hallway and called my name. He motioned for me to follow. We walked outside, around the building to a loading dock where the smokers went to hide. "I remember your grandfather," he said, lighting a cigarette with hands that shook. "Meticulous guy, always polite. The kind of man who made you feel like you mattered, just by standing next to him." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a sealed envelope. "He asked this be given to you personally, if the house ever changed hands without your signature on anything." He handed it over, no ceremony, just the weight of it, heavier than it looked. I nodded, thanked him, didn't open it until I got back to the motel. Inside was a letter, handwritten. "If you're reading this, then the story they told you isn't true. And this is the part no one else knows about." It came with a second document, notarized, dated, official-looking. An amendment to the original will, dated 6 months before he passed. It named me as co-beneficiary, with a clause. If Florence, his daughter, failed to treat me with basic dignity and familial respect, her share would go into trust, subject to review. I stared at the page for a long time. Then I whispered, "He knew." Fall sunlight filtered through the motel blinds. My hands were steady now. I folded the amendment, placed it back inside the envelope, and sat in silence. Not sadness, not victory, something quieter, like breathing after holding it too long. That night, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts pulled me back to last fall, the day Grandpa asked me to sit with him on the porch. He was slow that day, older than usual, but his eyes were sharp. "The world doesn't change people," he'd said. "It just reveals who they've been hiding." I'd smiled at the time, unsure if he was talking about himself or someone else. "You're stronger than they'll admit," he added. "And when the time comes, you'll have to choose, protect your peace or protect their comfort." I hadn't understood then. Now I did. I remember his fingers fidgeting with a coin. He always had one in his hand. "A habit from the war," he once said. He used to say coins remind you that every truth has 2 sides, but only one face shows at a time. Later, I'd find that same coin in his will packet. He left it to me, tucked behind a photo of us on the porch, the one they never hung. I sat there, remembering every word, and I felt something settle in my chest. Not anger, not yet. The next morning, I laid out everything I had on the motel bed. The old copy of the will I kept in a file folder since Grandpa first showed it to me. the amendment, the letter, and the receipt from the clerk's office. It all painted a story, one I'd lived, one they tried to erase. I started searching public filings online, the estate paperwork Florence had submitted after Grandpa's death. The PDF opened quickly. I scrolled, eyes scanning line by line, and then I found it, the signature. Not his, not even close. His G's curled like a question mark. This one was stiff, unfamiliar, forged, in the way only someone confident in not getting caught would dare. If Florence knew about the amendment and still submitted this, then this wasn't just fraud, it was a deliberate attempt to bury me. I stared at that signature like it could breathe. "You didn't just erase me," I whispered. "You tried to rewrite him." 2 days after I found the amendment, Florence sent a message through Lincoln. Not a call, not even a direct text, just a forwarded screenshot with the caption, "She wants to have a civilized conversation." Her words, not mine. The message read like it came from a PR manager, not a mother. "Let's not make this uglier than it needs to be. Come to the garden tomorrow, 3 p.m. No apology, no explanation, just instructions. So I showed up. Not because I wanted answers, I needed confirmation. To see her say it, not just imply it. The garden was curated to the point of fiction. Trimmed hedges, shaped like they were measured with rulers, pastel tablecloths, glass teacups lined up like stage props. Even the breeze felt forced. Nothing was out of place. Except me. Florence sat with perfect posture, hands folded over her knee like she'd rehearsed every word. She smiled like a politician caught in the middle of a fundraiser scandal. "You always made things harder than they needed to be," she said, before I even sat down. I nodded once. "Let's just do this." She poured the tea, 1 cube of sugar in hers, none in mine. Just how she liked it. She hadn't asked if I still took mine that way. I didn't touch the cup. "You were never strong, Victoria. Your grandfather. He felt sorry for you. That's why he let you stay." The words landed soft, not loud. That's what made them worse. It wasn't the cruelty that stunned me. It was the calm. She sipped, then looked past me, not at me, like she was reciting from a script that didn't require my lines. "You never had the mind for inheritance, just the attachment. You love things that can't love you back. Houses, ghosts, old men stuck in older ways." She smiled, not with joy, but with certainty. I had to protect what was left. I couldn't let sentimentality ruin what we've built. I didn't speak. I just reached for my tea and drank. It burned. Not the temperature, the taste, but I finished it anyway. "I didn't come here for justice," I said, rising from the chair. "I came to confirm what kind of enemy I was dealing with." That night, I sat on the edge of the motel bed, still in the clothes I'd worn to her garden. Loretta called just before midnight. She'd never called me before. "I saw you leave the house today," she said, voice gravelly with age and wear. "Your eyes looked like the storm hadn't started yet." I said nothing. "I need to tell you something your grandfather said, something he made me promise." I swallowed. Back then, Loretta was with Grandpa every day. She helped him eat when his hands got shaky, sat with him when no one else could bother. "One day, when I was helping him write a letter," she said, "he told me Florence was going to twist everything, that Victoria needed to know the truth, that she was there for him, not just for the house." There was silence between us. Then she added, softer now, and I overheard her. "Florence, with a man I didn't know, talking about streamlining the will months before he passed, not cleaning it up, not clarifying, streamlining." "Florence knew," I whispered. "She did," Loretta replied. "And so did he." I stayed on the line with her another 5 minutes, didn't ask more, didn't cry, just thanked her, and meant it. After I hung up, I stood in front of the mirror, no makeup, no performance. She didn't just erase me, I told my reflection. She tried to make me smaller in his memory. I pulled out every document I had, the will, the amendment, Grandpa's letter, laid them out like a crime scene. I took photos, scanned copies, named folders, labeled everything by date, not for court, not yet, just for me. I bought a fireproof lockbox at the Walgreens down the street and placed it under the bed. If she wanted to bury the truth, she'd have to burn the whole motel down. I opened my journal, hadn't touched it in years, and wrote one line. They've already told the world their story. Now I'll make sure the world hears mine. The last thing I did before bed was reread Grandpa's note, the same one from the envelope I'd nearly forgotten. One day, you'll need to prove what's real. Today was that day. And I was ready. I grabbed my phone, opened my contacts, scrolled past names I didn't recognize anymore, until I found the one I hadn't touched in 5 years. When the line connected, I didn't say hello. "Do you still have a reason to hate my mother?" I asked. A pause. Then, "More than ever." "Why?" The invitation came in a plain envelope. No name, no greeting, just resident printed in block letters like a bill or junk mail. But the card inside was anything but casual, an embossed announcement of the Costello Legacy celebration. I stared at it for a long time. There was no mistaking what it was. Florence's grand performance. The relaunch of the Costello name, now fully under her curation. I knew it wasn't meant for me, but I went anyway. Not out of curiosity, out of calculation. I wanted to see how far they were willing to take the lie. I didn't expect to watch them burn the parts where I had existed. I wore a plain dress, no jewelry. I didn't want to look like I was trying to belong. I just needed to watch. The valet barely glanced at me. No one at the door recognized my face. I walked in alone. The first thing I saw were the photos. Massive prints hung on rented easels. Florence in her charity gowns, Lincoln shaking hands at his white coat ceremony, Grandpa, reduced to a background figure, and me, nowhere. A timeline wall mapped out the rise of the Costellos. The captions told a story I didn't recognize, one that began and ended without me. A woman at the mic cleared her throat and began her speech. Behind every legacy is a woman who held the weight and built the future. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. The erasure was intentional. Florence stepped up next. The crowd leaned in. She had them all. City council members, donors, old friends who remembered nothing and cared less. "My father's passing left a gap," she said. "But we filled it with vision, with clarity, with resilience." She talked about the mess she had to clean up, the emotional burden that had clouded decisions before her. Her voice stayed steady, calculated. One woman beside me whispered, "I heard Florence carried the whole family after her dad passed. She's amazing." I stayed seated, didn't flinch. It's one thing to be forgotten. It's another to be erased and then replaced with applause. After the speech, I moved to the edge of the room, close to the bar. I needed air, but I wasn't ready to leave yet. Lincoln found me. He looked like he didn't know whether to hug me or hide. "I figured you'd show up," he said, smiling weakly. I waited. "Look, Mom just needed this to be about strength," he continued. You've always been a little more emotional." That word again. I tilted my head. "And that made me disposable?" He sighed. "You were always heavy, Vic. Not your weight, your energy. Since we were kids, you carried grief like it was a badge. And you carried silence like it was virtue," I shot back. He winced, but didn't argue. I asked him if he ever stood up for me, if he ever said, even once, that I mattered. He shrugged. I stayed neutral. I walked away before I screamed, not because I didn't want to scream, but because he didn't deserve it. None of them did. Neutrality isn't peacekeeping. It's watching someone bleed and deciding your shirt's too clean to ruin. I left the house without saying goodbye. No one followed. I didn't expect them to. I walked for 2 miles in the dark. The streets were quiet. The anger wasn't. I thought about all the times I bit my tongue to keep peace. Every time I sat at a dinner table pretending I wasn't being slowly erased. Back at the motel, I didn't turn the lights on. I walked straight to the bathroom and sat in the tub, still in my clothes. Turned the water on. Let it run over my ankles. Memories came like waves. Not gentle, not kind. My 8th birthday. No cake, just Florence saying, "You're not the kind of girl who needs attention." Senior year photos. Lincoln's got framed and mailed. Mine stayed in the envelope. Every family moment was curated without me, and I helped them do it. I stayed to preserve the story, I whispered, and they used it to delete me. I got out of the tub, dripping onto the tile, dried off, pulled out my journal, and wrote one line with thick, permanent ink. If they get to tell the story, I'll make sure it ends differently. I didn't feel sorry for myself. I felt ready. I'd always called this a fight, but now, for the first time, I called it what it was: war. Then my phone buzzed, an unknown number. I opened the message. I know what your mother did, and I have proof. Are you ready to burn the mask off? I stared at the screen. My heart wasn't pounding. It was quiet, controlled, like I'd been waiting for this message all my life. I stayed up most of the night staring at my phone. The message was still there. I know what your mother did, and I have proof. Are you ready to burn the mask off? I read it over and over until the glow of the screen made my eyes ache. I didn't respond. Not yet. I needed to sit with it. Needed to decide if I was still the version of myself who stayed quiet for the sake of keeping the family name clean. On the bed beside me were all the pieces I'd gathered. The documents, Grandpa's letters, receipts, the scanned copy of the signature that didn't belong to him, spread out like a puzzle that already told the truth. There was a part of me that wanted to pack it all back into the folder, check out of that motel, and vanish. Start somewhere new where nobody knew what I'd been labeled. But I couldn't. Not after everything. A memory hit me out of nowhere. Me as a kid, maybe 12, sitting on the floor beside Grandpa's chair. He was watching football, flipping a coin between his fingers like he always did when he was thinking. I'd asked him once why he always kept one in his pocket. He said, "Because you don't always need to flip it. Sometimes you just need to feel something solid in your hand when everything else is slipping." I asked if he ever wanted the spotlight. He said, "Nah, I wasn't built for that, but I can stand in the dark longer than most people can blink." That night in the motel, that's what I held on to. I didn't sleep. I planned. The next morning, I made a cup of bitter motel coffee, sat down at the chipped desk, and reopened the envelope from Grandpa. There it was again. His neat handwriting, the ink faded slightly but strong. Only this time, I noticed something I'd missed before. Tucked behind the letter was another document, a copy of the amendment, not the one I already had. This one was stamped Amendment Submission Copy, notarized and clearly labeled with the clerk's filing seal. I read it carefully, every line, especially the part that said, "In the event that my daughter, Florence Costello, fails to treat Victoria with dignity and familial respect, her portion of this estate shall be placed into trust until further notice." It wasn't just a will, it was a warning. He didn't hope for the best. He planned for the worst, and Florence had delivered. I didn't cry. I felt something sharper than sadness, a clarity that moved through me like cold water on a fevered head. He believed me, not in theory, in writing. I opened my laptop, called a friend of a friend, a paralegal I barely knew from years ago, who still worked in estate law. I didn't use my real name, just asked how to contest a potentially fraudulent estate filing. She didn't ask questions, just gave me a list of forms. I spent the next 3 hours completing them. Every name, every signature, every attached document scanned and labeled. I didn't storm the castle. I walked right through the front door holding the blueprints. By noon, I got confirmation. The estate funds and all property transfers were frozen pending legal review. Florence didn't know yet, but her lawyer had been notified, and when she did find out, well, I could almost picture it. The expression on her face, the sudden awareness that the crown she was so proud to wear had been sitting on a foundation made of paper soaked in lies. I didn't celebrate. I didn't text anyone. I took a walk instead, bought a coffee I didn't really want, and sat at a little table outside the corner bakery. People passed by like it was just another Thursday. They had no idea that somewhere in a courthouse file, my name was rising from the ashes. Back at the motel, the front desk rang my room. "Someone came by asking if you were staying here," the clerk said. "Didn't give a name." "Left quick." I looked out the window. Nothing but cars and concrete. If it was her, she didn't stay long. Later that evening, I got a voicemail from the paralegal's office. She sounded unsettled. There's been a serious misunderstanding. Florence's attorney would like to speak with you directly. I didn't call back. Instead, I opened my notebook and wrote one line. They taught me silence was weakness. I'm about to teach them what it really means. Then my phone lit up. New message. They froze the accounts. Everything. Mom is furious. What did you do? Lincoln. I didn't reply. Not because I was afraid, but because fear wasn't in the driver's seat anymore. That morning, I folded Grandpa's letter into my journal and marked the page with a single word. War. I didn't dress for battle, but I did dress with intent. Buttoned blouse, neat slacks, the same silver necklace Grandpa gave me for my 21st birthday. Small, unassuming, unmistakable. I made tea the way he used to. Strong, no sugar. Let it steep longer than needed. Watched the steam, then set the cup down untouched. There was something sacred about routines that reminded me I still existed. I'd learned this from her, from Florence. How to enter a space looking like nothing could touch you. Image, order, control. I was borrowing the same tools now, using them better. Lincoln had texted 3 times overnight. Call me. Mom's panicking. She wants to talk. I didn't reply. Then Florence finally sent one herself. Let's speak, not as enemies, as mother and daughter. I agreed, at a place of my choosing. Public, neutral, no theater. The cafe was quiet, with soft music and a view of the town square. I arrived 10 minutes early, not because I was eager, because I wanted to own the air before she entered it. She arrived late, overdressed, shaken but pretending she wasn't. Victoria, she said with that manufactured warmth, I know we've both made mistakes. No, I said. You made decisions. I lived through them. She gave a practiced smile. I don't want this to turn into something ugly. It already is. She took a breath, like she was preparing a script. You've always had the heart, Victoria, but not the head. You weren't built for this. That line hit harder than she probably expected. Not because it was new, but because it wasn't. It was recycled from years ago. Grandpa had once said something similar, but his tone had held concern, not dismissal. You weren't built for their world, Vicky, he'd told me, and thank God for that. I looked back at her. Maybe I wasn't built for your version of legacy, but I'm built to survive betrayal. You can't teach that. Her jaw tightened. The waitress came by. We both declined coffee. Florence leaned in slightly, as if trying to reassert control. I'm here to offer you something. A chance to step away. She pulled out a manila envelope and slid it across the table. I didn't touch it. There's a check inside. 200,000. Enough to start over. Drop the contest. Walk away. We both win. I laughed, not loudly. Just enough for her to hear the insult in it. You're offering to buy me out of something that already belonged to me? I'm protecting what's left of our name, she said, her voice suddenly sharper. Your name, too, whether you like it or not. I pulled out a folded page from my own bag, placed it beside the envelope. You remember this, right? The trust clause? From the amendment you thought you'd buried? Her face didn't move, but her fingers curled. You wouldn't dare take everything from your own mother. You already did it to your daughter, I said quietly. I'm just returning the favor, legally. She stared, said nothing. I stood. I don't need your check. I need the world to stop confusing your story for mine. Later that evening, I was back at the motel, still dressed from the meeting. Hadn't eaten. Wasn't hungry. A knock came. Not at the door, but at the motel lobby. I watched from the 2nd-floor railing as Lincoln walked in, asked the clerk something, then waited. I met him outside. He looked older than last week. That's what guilt does. I didn't know, he said. About the amendment, about the clause. You didn't want to know. I stayed out of it because I thought it was safer. No, I said. You stayed beside her. That's not the same thing. He nodded, looking down. I'm going to write a letter, he said. To the local paper, I'll say what I should have said years ago. I didn't ask for it. But he kept talking. She made me believe you were fragile. Turns out, you're the only one who didn't break. It didn't fix anything, but it moved something. Back in my room, I sat on the bed, replaying his words. Not because I needed them, but because they proved one thing. Silence doesn't protect the people you think it does. Sometimes it just buries you next to the lie. I started tidying the room, picked up receipts, folded laundry I hadn't touched. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Costello? A woman's voice said. This is Channel 9 News. We've heard your story. Would you be willing to speak on record? I didn't hesitate. Yes, I said. But only if I get to read the last line. The invitation was slipped under my motel room door sometime after midnight. No return address, no signature, just gold lettering on thick cardstock. You're cordially invited to the Costello Legacy Foundation Gala. No one had to sign their name. I already knew who wanted me to see what she'd built, or what she thought she had. The theme was Heritage Reimagined. Florence's way of turning lies into dinner conversation and betrayal into centerpieces. I dressed with care, not extravagantly, just enough to stand out by not trying. I took the USB drive from the motel safe and slipped it into my purse. No speech, no drama, just facts. The kind Florence hoped had died with Grandpa. He once told me, the truth doesn't need to yell, it just needs to wait for its moment. That moment had come. By the time I arrived at the Marin County Art Center, the parking lot was already full. Cameramen positioned, donors smiling in gowns that had never seen dirt. Inside, Florence floated through the room like she owned it, and everyone in it, the queen of reclaimed legacy. The slideshow behind her was curated with care, childhood photos of her playing piano, images of Lincoln shaking hands with politicians, clippings from newspaper features, and then, bold across one slide, she saved the family estate when no one else could. The applause was immediate. Cameras flashed. A woman near me whispered, God, she really rebuilt everything from the ground up. I stood at the back, quiet, invisible, but not voiceless. She closed her speech with something rehearsed. We honor those who build legacies, not those who cling to shadows. People clapped again. She smiled, grateful and smug. She didn't know the projector was already wired, didn't see me click the remote from across the room. The lights dimmed for the closing reel, but it wasn't her slideshow that came up. It was Grandpa, sitting in the garden, in his favorite chair. His voice steady, tired, but clear. If you're watching this, then someone's tried to rewrite what I left behind. The room went still. He spoke slowly, calmly. Victoria was not only present, she was essential. I included safeguards in the trust to protect her. If anyone violates that, especially Florence, the amendment must be honored. He paused. I feared Florence's ambition would outweigh her integrity. She always wanted the story to be hers. Silverware stopped moving. Some stood. Others whispered. Florence didn't move. Her hands clutched the podium. The mask slipped, but she didn't speak. Grandpa's last line echoed. A legacy isn't stolen, it's lived. And Victoria lived it better than any of them. The screen went black. Someone coughed. Another asked, Was that real? A man from the press lifted his phone and started filming. One donor stepped forward. You said the estate was transferred by your father. Was that video recent? Florence opened her mouth. And nothing came out. Another guest gathered her purse and left. Then another. The ripple became a wave. I turned and walked out before the questions reached me. I didn't need a spotlight, just a crack in the curtain. I didn't have to destroy her. I just had to let the truth walk in wearing a microphone. Outside, the night was quiet. I didn't feel triumphant, just lighter, like I'd taken off a coat someone else had made me wear. I didn't get my name back tonight. I proved it never left. At the curb, my phone buzzed. A text from Florence. You humiliated me. You always had a way of being more dangerous than you looked. I read it once, deleted it, Sunlight crawled through the blinds that morning, not harsh, just present, like something I didn't have to fight anymore. I woke up in a place that wasn't fancy, wasn't grand, but was mine. The kitchen had chipped tiles, the windows stuck sometimes, and the floors creaked. But I could breathe, and that was enough. I didn't check my phone right away, didn't need to. Instead, I opened the envelope from the bank that had come in the mail the day before. It confirmed what the lawyer hinted at after the gala. The trust had been formally transferred. The estate now recognized me as its legal beneficiary. The house, the funds, the name, no longer tied to Florence. I didn't smile, didn't cry either. I just exhaled. Freedom doesn't always look like a win. Sometimes it just looks like peace. While unpacking the last box, a knock tapped on my door. I opened it to find Mr. Bellamy, the old man who lived across from Grandpa's house for as long as I could remember. He held a small, yellowed envelope. "Your grandfather gave me this years ago," he said. "Said to pass it along if you ever needed reminding." Inside was a photograph, me and Grandpa on the front porch, his hand on mine, both of us smiling like the world hadn't started lying yet. It was the same photo that had fallen to the floor during my eviction. I hadn't realized it had been picked up, let alone saved. "That porch," I whispered, "saw everything I was before anyone else did." Bellamy nodded. "He told me you'd carry what mattered, not what sold." He didn't stay long, just handed me the memory and walked away without waiting for thanks. And maybe that was the most loyal thing anyone in my family had ever done for me. Later that day, I opened a folder I'd been avoiding. The one Florence gave me the week she staged the house, told me it was temporary relocation paperwork. I flipped through the pages until I found it. In tiny print, buried under legal language, it was there. Voluntary release of all occupancy claims. She didn't just evict me from the house. She erased me from its memory, legally. For a second it burned, like fresh betrayal, but it didn't stay. I took the paper outside to the small balcony, placed it in an old tin can, lit a match, and let it go. The flames curled up around her signature first. "I won't let your lies live longer than they already have." The following evening, I walked back to the old house, not to reclaim anything, just to return what she had always feared most, the truth. Florence opened the door in a robe. Her face tightened, but she didn't speak first. I handed her a small box, the original amendment, a printed transcript of Grandpa's video, and a handwritten note. "You always said I didn't have the head for this," I said. "Turns out I didn't need it. I had the heart, and he knew that was enough." She opened her mouth. I stopped her. "This isn't for closure. It's for documentation." Then I turned and walked away. No dramatic exit, no raised voice, no need. Not every ending needs noise. Some deserve only silence. 3 days passed. Then came the email. It was from Florence, meant for Lincoln, but forwarded by mistake. "She didn't just win," she wrote. "She became something I can't compete with. Respected." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Some victories aren't won in courtrooms. They're won in the echo of your own name finally spoken without shame. And mine, Victoria, finally felt like it belonged to me,